Why does love feel so powerful, yet leave so many broken? Schopenhauer believed it's because we're not meant to win this game. The rules were designed to deceive us, and you've been playing all along. I'll show you how. If you've ever felt like love cost you more than it gave back, hit like and subscribe. This isn't just about heartbreak, it's about waking up. Love is the grand story you've been told your entire life. It's painted as a force deeper than reason, more profound than logic, something eternal, sacred, transcendent. And when you feel it, something within you whispers, "This is it. This is everything." But if that's true, why does it leave you empty? Why does it betray you? The bitter truth, though you might not like hearing it, is that it may have never been real, at least not in the way you think. Arthur Schopenhauer argued that love isn't about you at all. It isn't about your happiness, your fulfillment, or even your partner. Love is a mask, carefully placed on your face by nature itself, tricking you into chasing something that serves its agenda, not yours. You've felt it, haven't you? That magnetic pull when you see someone who seems perfect. You convince yourself this isn't just attraction, it's destiny. Something cosmic has aligned to deliver you the person you're meant to be with. And so, you pour yourself into them, your time, your attention, your heart. Maybe you thought this time was different. Maybe you told yourself, this isn't just chemistry, this is real. Yet when it ended, when it all collapsed, didn't it feel almost inevitable in hindsight? Schopenhauer would say this result wasn't just predictable, it was scripted from the start. Here's the truth. Love, the way you experience it, isn't some noble or divine force. It's biological theater. Schopenhauer called it a manifestation of the will to life, a fundamental urge that drives all living things. That euphoric spark you feel when you think you found the one? That's nature baiting you, fueling your urge to preserve the human race. The flutter in your chest, the longing to be near someone, the desperation to make them yours. None of it is about your soul. It's about biology's obsession with reproduction. Evolution doesn't care about your happiness. It doesn't want you to find peace. It simply wants you to obey its agenda, to fall deeply, irrationally in love so that it can ensure the survival of the species. Think about the sacrifices you've made for love, the sleepless nights, the ridiculous fights, the plans abandoned. What was all of that for? People sacrifice for love because they believe it's sacred. They see those grand gestures in movies and think that's what defines true romance. The problem is, these sacrifices don't always lead to joy or even reciprocity. They often lead to resentment or heartbreak. The reality is that what you thought was love may have been a temporary high, blinding you to nature's greater plan. Take a moment to reflect on how we're conditioned to idealize love. We're raised on fairy tales, bombarded with songs about eternal devotion, and applauded for grand romantic gestures. We all know someone who pulled out all the stops. Lavish dates, poetic declarations, even life-altering decisions, thinking that if they just prove how much they care, it will secure love forever. But when betrayal strikes, when the crack in the foundation widens, it doesn't feel like nature's handiwork. It feels personal, doesn't it? Let me stop you there. The betrayal isn't personal. It never was. The heartbreak you've experienced isn't because you were unlucky or unworthy. It's because you, like everyone else, are being manipulated by forces beyond your control. Modern science even names that blurry post-sex sadness, post-coital tryst, as nature's momentary reveal of its deception. Schopenhauer called love the cunning tactic of the species to subdue the individual. If love's real purpose is to ensure survival, then your heartbreak isn't a bug in the system, it's a part of it. The highs and the lows, the passion and the devastation, every bit of it is intentional. And here's something you won't hear in love songs. If love's only function is to ensure reproduction, then its success isn't measured by how happy you are. It doesn't care if you feel lonely in your relationship. It doesn't care if you sacrifice your ambition, your sanity, or your sense of self. All those tragedies you cling to, all those heartbreaks that feel so earth-shattering, are merely consequences of nature pressing you to conform to its design. Every time you've fallen madly in love, it was less about you falling and more about being pushed. So if your passion wasn't about your soul, what was it really pushing you toward? Schopenhauer's insight strips love of its mystique. Behind the poetry, the flowers, the whispered promises, lies a mechanism designed to keep the human race going. He wrote, "Love is nature's bait, sweet illusion to secure reproduction." That doesn't make the feelings any less powerful. Love can still feel beautiful, euphoric, meaningful. But maybe it's meaningful in a different way than you thought. Understanding this doesn't cheapen love, it clarifies it. It liberates you from drowning in its illusions. If love is just a tool of biology, just a mechanism, not personal, not sacred, then what does that mean for everything you've built on its foundation? It's a tough question, but it's also an opening. You've spent enough time believing the lie. Now you have the opportunity to see the truth for what it is. And with that truth comes freedom, or at least the chance for it. Because if you know the game, you can finally start to play it on your terms. The real question then isn't why love feels so fleeting. The question is why, despite knowing it will hurt us, we keep surrendering to it. If love is the lie, what does that say about you? It's time to look in the mirror and meet the person who believed it. Here's a question most people avoid asking themselves. What if the heartbreak you're feeling isn't actually about the other person? What if it's about the person you made them out to be? The fantasy you created in your mind? This is hard to admit, but it's worth confronting. The pedestal you put them on wasn't because of who they truly were. It was because of who you wanted them to be. And that's where the trap begins. Think back to the last time you said something like, "She's perfect for me," or "I'll never find anyone like her." Be honest with yourself. Were you really describing her as a living, breathing human being? Or were you describing an ideal, a version of her you invented? You see, we all have this tendency to project certain qualities onto the people we're drawn to. In romantic relationships, it becomes almost second nature. You meet someone and suddenly your mind turns them into something larger than life. You start filling in the gaps between their real traits with attributes you've always wanted in a partner. Kindness, loyalty, intelligence, beauty, whatever it is for you. The problem is, the moment you do this, you stop seeing them for who they are, and you start seeing who you want them to be. Schopenhauer had a brutal way of describing this. He said men are complicit in their own suffering because they idolize women instead of recognizing them as they are. We believe we seek personal joy, but unwittingly serve the immortal life force, he wrote, emphasizing that this idealization isn't just emotional, it's almost pre-programmed. And isn't that true? How much of your heartbreak stems from an actual betrayal, and how much stems from your disappointment that they didn't live up to an image you built for them? It's not that she changed. It's that the illusion you created could never survive reality. That's why relationships can start feeling like a slow-motion disaster. It's not that she failed you. It's that your fantasy failed you. Our minds instinctively fill in blanks, projecting virtues that don't exist. She might do something small like sharing an interest you love or smiling in a way you find irresistible. And suddenly, your mind assigns a whole list of virtues to her. She's kind, she's understanding, she's my soulmate. But has she really shown you these things? Or is it simply what you chose to believe? Science shows we're wired to connect the dots, filling in blanks where there's no real information. Unfortunately, in matters of love, those blank spaces are most often filled with wishful thinking, not reality. Here's where it gets dangerous. Once you've built this mental pedestal for someone, you start ignoring the warning signs. Red flags become pink flags, and then they fade entirely. You don't want to question the person you've idealized because that could shatter the perfection you've created in your head. Maybe there were moments when you noticed something was off. a comment that rubbed you the wrong way, a habit that didn't sit right. But you brushed it aside. Why? Because the cost of admitting that flaw was too high. It meant admitting that she wasn't the ideal woman you had convinced yourself she was. Recall the moment you laughed off the first red flag. What story did you tell yourself to avoid the truth? Instead of addressing it, you convinced yourself those flaws didn't matter, or worse, that you could change her. But no one can live up to the expectations you've buried them under. And when reality refused to align with your fantasy, the heartbreak hit like a freight train. This isn't just a personal weakness. Schopenhauer argued that it's a universal flaw within men, the tendency to romanticize women to the point where they cease to exist as people in their minds. In his words, you live in a beautiful dream, blind to the human being standing in front of you. You aren't in love with them. You're in love with an illusion, a creation of your own mind. That's why the disappointment feels so cutting. When you finally collide with reality, it's not just the relationship falling apart. It's the destruction of everything you told yourself it meant. You weren't broken by her flaws. You were broken by the fantasy you built. But let's make one thing clear. This doesn't mean the pain isn't real. The heartbreak, the sleepless nights, the weight on your chest. It's all real. It's just misdirected. You think you're mourning her, but what you're really mourning is the loss of who you believed she was. And here's the hard truth. That person never existed. She wasn't perfect for you. She wasn't your everything, because no one can be. That's not how human beings work. She was just herself, flawed, complicated, human. And that's okay. The problem isn't her. The problem is that you couldn't or wouldn't see her clearly. If this feels harsh, it's only because it's necessary. To break free from the cycle of idealization and disappointment, you need to start seeing love for what it is and the people you're drawn to for who they are. This demands something few people are willing to do: brutally honest self-reflection. You have to examine the patterns in your own mind. Ask yourself why you were so quick to see perfection where it didn't exist. Was it loneliness? A fear of being unlovable? Or was it simply easier to run toward fantasy than to sit with the discomfort of reality? Whatever it was, you need to name it. Otherwise, it will keep haunting you, pushing you to repeat the same mistakes in every relationship to come. But here's the good news. Recognizing the pedestal is the first step to destroying it. Once you see the pattern, you can stop feeding it. The next time you feel that magnetic pull toward someone, pause. Ask yourself, am I responding to who they actually are, or am I projecting an idea onto them? Be honest with yourself when flaws start to appear. Don't brush them aside or convince yourself they don't matter. Sit with them, evaluate them, and decide whether they're things you can truly accept. Because that's what love is. It's not blind devotion to an ideal. It's the imperfect connection between two flawed people who see each other clearly and choose to stay. When you stop turning people into fantasies, you free yourself from the emotional roller coaster of falling in love with illusions and crashing into reality. And yes, this means love might lose some of the magic you've attached to it. But perhaps that's not a bad thing. Maybe love isn't supposed to be magic. Maybe it's supposed to be real. And a love rooted in reality, one free of pedestals and blind spots, might actually lead you somewhere stronger, somewhere truer, somewhere that doesn't feel like devastation when it ends. If you're willing to stop looking outward and start looking inward, you can escape the disappointment that inevitably follows your fantasies. But this raises a bigger question. If we're the ones who build the illusion, why do we find it so hard to let go of it? Maybe the answer lies deeper, somewhere in the forces within us that keep us bound to this cycle. Let's pull back the curtain even further. Let's talk about biology. Why do you keep chasing what hurts you? Every time love promised you meaning, fulfillment, or forever, didn't it pull you into suffering instead? Schopenhauer believed there's a reason for that, a reason you may not want to hear. He argued that human beings are bound by a hidden force, the will to life, which cares about one thing and one thing only: survival. Not yours, but the species. And love? Love is one of its strongest weapons. At first, this sounds impossible, doesn't it? You've been told your feelings for someone are personal, unique, an expression of your soul. But if love was created to bring you fulfillment, why does it leave behind so much pain? It's not a flaw in the system. Heartbreak and obsession are part of the design. Nature doesn't care if you're miserable or if your dreams fall apart. The will to life is an irrational, all-consuming drive that uses you to keep the species alive. Its most effective tool isn't logic or reason, it's desire. Think about the lengths you've gone to for love. Maybe you stayed in a toxic relationship, convincing yourself it was worth it despite all the red flags. Maybe you gave up ambitions, burned bridges, or sacrificed your own goals for someone else. Rationally, you knew it didn't make sense, yet you couldn't stop yourself. That's not coincidence. That's biology pulling the strings. Schopenhauer didn't see love as a noble act or even a genuine connection between two people. He saw it as a trick. The emotions we experience, infatuation, longing, even devotion, are part of a carefully orchestrated illusion. Romantic love gives us the illusion of meaning, but it's merely a tool to ensure reproduction. As Schopenhauer observed, every trait that draws you in, youth, beauty, charm, is nature's cunning tactic, not destiny. When you feel yourself captivated by someone's smile, voice, or physical presence, it's not fate. It's nature baiting you with what the species needs, tricking you into thinking these feelings are your own. But here's the cruel part. While love promises all these things, happiness, togetherness, fulfillment, it rarely delivers them. Instead, it manipulates you into irrational behavior.